Coronavirus truth now versus coronavirus hysteria. It's up to me to make a foil, make a contrast too, to show you the difference between what's really happening and the hysteria you're seeing every day. First, let's talk about this segment by Dr. Redfield. Dr. Redfield, the former director of the CDC, dropped kind of a bombshell. I mean, this guy wasn't like a low-level government bureaucrat. He was the head of the CDC in the Trump administration. Probably knows a little bit about what's going on, no? Here's Dr. Redfield on a CNN interview, and he drops a little bombshell saying the quiet part about loud about where he thinks the coronavirus from Wuhan came from. Check this out.
I still think the most likely etiology of this pathogen in Wuhan was from a laboratory, escaped. Other people don't believe that. That's fine. Science will eventually figure it out. It's not unusual for respiratory pathogens that are being worked on in a laboratory to infect a laboratory worker.
I thought we weren't allowed to say that. I heard a rumor that was a conspiracy theory. I thought we weren't allowed to say that. Now, this guy was the former head of the CDC, so I would love to see media lunatics who know nothing about immunology, virology, medicine, or anything else. I'd love to see them say, no, I definitely know more than Dr. Redfield. And this is just crazy talk, is it? That the coronavirus from the Wuhan area of China may have leaked out of a lab? How crazy is it? You know, I was on Hannity on Friday, guest hosting, as I told you before, with a massive headache, but thank you. I got through it. I actually enjoyed it while I was doing. My headache went away like 2 minutes in. I don't know if you noticed if you were watching. Like the first 2 minutes, I was talking kind of slow, and then boom, espresso hit, bang. I was ready. It was like that Thanos character adding the fifth or sixth, whatever, Infinity Stone. I was ready to rock and roll with the snap. And I had Gordon Chang on, who's an expert on China policy. Brilliant, brilliant man. And Gordon Chang brought up an interesting point about the Chinese lab theory. I had known what he was going to say because I've interviewed him before. I had an idea. You know, they were doing some research in that Chinese lab in Wuhan on respiratory viruses. And you know what other kind of research they do over there? Get ready, media people. Heads are going to explode. I know you're going to call it a conspiracy theory, but that's all right. We'll make fun of you in a few months when we see this stuff come out in the news because they won't be able to hide it. They were doing what's called gain of function testing on respiratory viruses. What's that? Always ask a question. What's that? That's when you tinker with viruses using virologists and scientists to gain function, make them more infectious, make them more deadly. Wow, that's really odd. They were doing that research in that Wuhan lab, really close to where the outbreak of the coronavirus from the Wuhan area of China came from. I'm sure it's all one big coinky-dink. Please go into a search engine and check that out. Gain of function testing. Why would people do that? Well, there's a legitimate reason sometimes. Sometimes labs do that kind of research to test the virus to see if the virus were to naturally mutate and become more infectious, how they would handle it. It's not all nefarious, but sometimes gain of function tests and gain of function testing and experiments can have another more nefarious, pernicious reason. What do you think that would be? Joe's curious too, apparently. Maybe bioweapons testing. I'm sure it's all a conspiracy theory. Now, do we know that in this case? We don't. Am I making a conclusion? I'm not. I'm stating to you facts that is why some governments, without our best interests in mind, have engaged in gain-of-function testing on viruses to tinker for bioweapons. There are legitimate reasons too. We'll have to see in the future. We wait for facts on the show, unlike the media. But that does happen. So some coronavirus truth finally coming out. But we still have coronavirus hysteria every single day. Why is Fauci? I don't understand why Fauci's still a credible figure in all this, Dr. Fauci. I really don't. I stayed away from criticizing him for a long time because I didn't know and we didn't have the details on R-naughts and the lethality of the virus and everything. But now we're getting to the point now with Dr. Fauci where the contradictions are just hard to ignore anymore. Here's Dr. Fauci in another media appearance where every time he opens his mouth, I think he says something even more ridiculous, who's now is somehow suggesting that the kids, who it's now shown through science, facts, and data, are at extremely low risk from the virus. They don't have that ACE receptor in the degrees adults do. When they do get it, the cases are mild, and it is very rare for kids to be hospitalized. Here's Dr. Fauci with some more medical, quote, air quotes, advice this weekend in another media appearance. Check this out.
If parents are vaccinated, they still do need to be concerned about their unvaccinated children playing together in groups. Is that right?
Yeah, the children can clearly wind up getting infected. When we talk about what you can do when you're vaccinated, you can certainly have members of a family, if the adults are vaccinated, and you're in the home with your child, you don't need to wear a mask and you can have physical contact. When the children go out into the community, you want them to continue to wear masks when they're interacting with groups from multiple households.
You know what? I'm just going to leave that there because I'm going to say something I'll regret later. I'm really tired of this. By the way, have you seen the environmental disaster from these masks? Just put discarded masks environment, again, in any search engine. I know, again, liberals and Democrats listening, you have a tough time with all this stuff. But if you think this is consequence-free, recommending masks in extremely low-risk scenarios all the time, you're like, well, what's the downside? Just check that out in a search engine.